Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Connecticut and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys so far. They seem to be a very kind of diverse brewery, if you like, doing lots and lots of different styles. But the thing that I really like about these guys is that they're a very, very solid lager beer brewery. And as you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, you'll know that over the last couple of years I've been getting really into my lagers again, and these guys have some really nice lager beers, I have to say. So the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't tried from them before. It's a style that I don't get to review all that often on the channel actually, but one that I really quite enjoy, and I had no idea that this style was so popular in the US, but it kind of makes sense in this particular state, Connecticut, because there were a lot of German immigrants here, so yeah, that's probably the reason why lagers in general are so popular. But this is one of their kind of latest seasonal releases from what I understand, and I think it is a beer that has been quite recently developed. I don't think this one's been released over the years for all that long. I think they only brought this one out maybe 2 or 3 years ago, if I remember rightly what they said. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a little bit north of us here in Hampden to Cheshire, and we're going to return to Counterweight Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Fest Bier. It comes in at 5.9% ABV, and as the name suggests, this one is a Fest Bier lager. So for those of you who don't know exactly what a Fest Bier is, it's kind of like a stronger version of the German Helles, and these beers are of course related to the Oktoberfest in Munich. Oktoberfest of course began as a celebration of a royal marriage, and they very often used to drink Märzen at Oktoberfest, which was brewed in March and then aged and fermented all the way through to October, which made it a little bit stronger. But what happened was that these beers became really quite strong and people were getting drunk very, very easily, so they introduced a new lighter type of beer which was called Fest Bier, and that's what you have here. That's the basic story of the Fest Bier. But yeah, like I say, these guys are like kind of slightly stronger Helles lagers, to be honest with you, but they can be very, very nice. But yeah, I've not tried this one from the brewery when I did my out and about video, so it should be interesting to kind of taste this one and see what it's all about. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. But as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Counterweight Brewing Company so far, and we will add a few more to that list over the next wee while. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist, and that's being added to quite regular at the moment, of course. And yeah, check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some really, really nice things out there that you can check out. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Counterweight Brewing Company then. So Counterweight Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Cheshire in Connecticut, which is actually about halfway between New Haven to the south and Hartford to the north, and the company was founded by Matt Westfall back in 2017. Now, during his time as an undergraduate student, he spent a lot of time at Zox Home Brewing and also at Willimantic Brewing Company, and his experiences there just got him fascinated with brewing beer. So at the time he was studying sociology, but he soon started studying a little bit more about brewing beer and the different ingredients and all this kind of thing, and this ultimately took up most of his time, and eventually he ended up as the head brewer at New England Brewing Company, where he stayed for 9 years, and he helped these guys become very, very well established within the state. But he opted a bit later on to start his own venture, and so in 2017 he founded Counterweight Brewing, and the brewery was originally based here in Hampden. But there they had a 3-vessel, 20-barrel brewing system, which is about 3,200 litres per brew, and they also operated a cool ship which had fodders, and they had fodders to go with it as well. So they were one of only a few breweries at the time operating a cool ship in the whole state of Connecticut. But over the years they continued to expand their fermentation capacity, and they also opened up a tap room on site. But eventually they outgrew this place that they had, and so in the spring of 2022 they moved to a new facility in Cheshire with nearly 30,000 square feet of floor space, and they've got a new 4-vessel 30-barrel system, which is about 4,750 litres, and they've got an on-site tap room there which has 2 bars on different floors. You'll see that in the Out and About video I did if you check it out. And yeah, they are still expanding that from what I understand. They've got a room on the side that's going to be their barrel programme from what I understand. But as of September 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 200 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they are continuing to increase that. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Counterweight Brewing Company for the moment. I know that these guys are very highly regarded in the state of Connecticut, and the standard of beer here is very good, and the scene, from what I understand, is booming as well. So there will no doubt be even more breweries to talk about in Connecticut over the next week. Well, I think they've got in the region of like 70 or 80 different breweries actually. But yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at this beer itself, because we've said everything about the brewery. If you want to learn more, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out the Untappd page to learn more about the different kinds of beer that they've done. So, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty nice. You can see you've got the white and blue kind of checks on this one, which is one of the symbols of the state of Bavaria in Germany. You can see the Counterweight Brewing Company symbol on the back there. That one, sorry, is the independent owned and crafted symbol there from Counterweight, and you can see this is the brewery's main symbol on the front of the can there. So like I mentioned earlier, this one is 5.9% ABV. It says on the back here, our award-winning lager is a traditional deep golden fest beer that's patiently lagered and brewed with German Pilsner, Vienna and Munich malts to provide layered malt character. So this one is a 473 milliliter can, 1 American pint, or 16 fluid ounces in freedom units as we call it. But yeah, it's nicely presented, this one. Let's get it out into the glass and see what it's going to be about. I think Josh has had a few of these ones already, but yeah, I think Josh has had a few of these. But I haven't actually tried this one yet, because they gave us, when we went up to Counterweight Brewing, they were very kind and gave us like 6 4-packs of beer, so we could try all the different ones, which was pretty awesome of them. So a big shout out once again to Larry at Counterweight Brewing for making this particular review possible. So yeah, that's interesting. So as you can see, we've poured most of the beer out into the glass. We leave a little bit of it so we can check out the aroma. But yeah, before the head on this one disappears, you can see that I poured, you know, about 80% of the beer, and it came out with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, cream-coloured head. There are 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. You can see a little bit of sedimentation actually in this one. There's a few sort of suspended particles floating around in this beer, but you can see I don't know how well you guys can see it, but there is quite a little bit of active carbonation in there along the bottom of the glass. I did rinse the glass before I started this video, but still some of the carbonation is sticking to the side. It's just how it goes sometimes. But yeah, it looks really quite nice. So in terms of colour, I would say this beer is quite a rich golden straw. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to different lager beers and things like that. It's only a few breweries that like to age doppelbocks and do icebox and things like that. that that factor will come into play. But yeah, it looks pretty nice, this one. A nice rich golden straw colour. A little bit richer, of course, in its colour than the German Helles, mainly because there's a bit more malt in there and it's thus a little bit more kind of boozy. I don't know if there's anything else we really need to say about the appearance of this beer, to be honest with you. I think we can have a little look at the aroma of this one now and see what it's all about. Looking forward to this, actually. Oh, yeah. That's lovely. This is one of the things I do like about Counterweight as well, is they do use the original German, Czech, Austrian malts. And if you're going to do lager beers, you kind of have to do that. What I've found actually with a lot of lager beers brewed in America is that they tend to be a little bit sweeter, and they also tend to just be a little bit wetter in their mouthfeel, which kind of makes sense because, you know, water profile and stuff. You see this when you get lager beers brewed in different countries. I've had, you know, Czech lagers brewed in Finland and stuff like that, and also in Sweden. And, you know, a lot of the breweries, you know, when you go to these countries, the water is just that little bit cleaner and things like that, or it feels a little bit cleaner. And you'll notice that. That's one of the things you're going to get with these styles of beer. They will feel a bit different depending on what country they're brewed in, or exactly even where in that country they're brewed. But this one gives you everything. I'll say that straight away from the aroma. It gives you everything you would expect of this style. But it smells lovely. Yeah. So, the backbone of this beer, you have a lovely you've got a lovely, fresh, white bready bread crust forming the backbone of this beer with this one. There's a little bit of a kind of woody and Jacob's cream crackery note in this one. You can quite often get these notes in lager beers. But yeah, mainly the backbone of this beer is like a sort of fresh, white bready bread crust. On top of that, as I say, there's a little touch of woody and crackery character in there. But on top of that, you have this really nice, soft kind of like wholemeal brown bread. Actually, you do get this little bit of brown bready character, which I think will be coming mainly from the Vienna malt in this one. But you can also smell like a sweeter brown bread, a sweeter white bread in there, sorry, and that's the Munich malts that are going to give you that. The Munich malts are always very kind of soft and fluffy and white bready. The Vienna malts have a little bit more of a kind of pumpernickel-y, almost rye bready character to them. So you can smell both of those at play in here, and that's lovely. So yeah, on top of the on top of all the kind of bready notes, you'll get at the back of the nose some of that kind of drier, crisp character from the Pilsner malt in there. You can really smell that at the back of your nose, and it gives the beer almost just a little touch of like bitiness, which is interesting. So yeah, you've got that little bit of bitiness coming out of the beer, and then you've also got a little bit of that you've also got a little bit of a kind of, I would say, there's a little bit of kind of sweetness in this beer as well, which you would expect from the Pilsner malt too. So you've got this kind of like oily, kind of concentrated biscuit note, which will be the alcohol in this one, but you're also getting that kind of lighter, more kind of sweet cookie or McVitie's digestive biscuit type aroma coming out of this beer. So that's really interesting too. Other than that, I think we've said everything we need to about the malty side of the beer, to be honest with you. The malty and yeasty side I think we've covered quite well. So on the hoppy side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. There's obviously some kind of German noble hop in this one. And I say that because of the nature of the green component of this beer. So yeah, there's a little bit of smooth earthiness in there, a little touch of herbal character as well, but you also have, on top of that, you also have this lovely, you've got this lovely little bit of kind of bright floral aromaticity. So you have a little bit of a kind of floral note to this one, and it smells a little bit stronger. So I wonder if they're maybe using like Pearl or Hercules or one of the slightly higher alpha acid German hops in here, and that makes sense when the beer's that little touch more boozy, rather than using the Hallertau or Tech 9 Mittelfrüh, which is only 4.5% alpha acid. So yeah, remember that remember that your alpha acids tell you, you know, how bitter the hop's going to be. The beta acids are kind of like the beta acids are the ones that are mainly responsible for the sort of flavour and aroma, and then the alpha beta ratio that you get in the hop means it kind of tells you how long the bitterness is going to linger there in the beer, if that makes sense. But yeah, the green component of this beer is quite nice. Lovely, fresh, kind of zesty, grassy character coming out of it. Nice, bright floral aromaticity. And you do get this little bit of fruitiness as well. So let's just focus on that to round off the aroma. So for me, the fruity side of this beer, it's kind of what you'd expect. You've got a lovely, big, sort of oily, peary character coming out of it. So yeah, big, oily, peary sort of note. You do have a little bit of like sultan in there, you know, dry white green grapes. There's a wee bit of that going on. Yeah, so sort of dry white green grapes coming out of this one. And then you have this little bit of, you've got the dry kind of white green grape in there, the oily pear. There's maybe a teeny little bit of apricot, but you do also get a bit of gooseberry and a kind of fresh green apple. These are all things that you can get from you know, lighter lager beers I found in these German noble hops. So aroma-wise, this beer, it really isn't anything surprising, but it does smell very, very nice. It's going to be good, this, I think. So let's get some more of this out into the glass. We've still got a wee bit left, actually. I don't want to fill the glass to the brim, because that's just asking for trouble. But yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. I think it's time for us to have a look at this one now. So yeah, this one is the Fest beer, coming in at 5.9% ABV from Counterweight Brewing Company in Cheshire, here in Connecticut. Slàinte, skål, cheers, prost. That's pretty damn nice. I'm going to say that straight away. Takes your palate a wee bit of time to kind of adjust to it and really get the aftertaste and things like that, and just get in the mood for these lovely German malts. But again, this is a very, very solid lager beer. I really do enjoy my German style stuff. It's hard to beat. I enjoy my IPAs and things like that as well, but you know, these German beers are just are really pretty special, I have to say. But yeah, this is a really nice example of the style, I'm going to say that. When it comes to the Fest beers, this is definitely one of the more kind of bready examples I've had, rather than being quite, rather than being sweeter. I did have one from Armada Brewing, and that was a little bit sweeter than some of the other ones, but that was also really nice. So yeah, this is pretty damn good, I have to say. So let's break this beer down and then describe it a bit more in depth for you, as we always do. Middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, it's this lovely, soft, white bready bread crust there. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, as you go into the aftertaste, you're going to get a little touch of woodiness. You're going to get a little touch of woodiness. You're going to get a little touch of kind of crackery character and things like that. And yeah, that goes together really nicely. So yeah, the way that this beer kind of pieces together in that regard is really very, very nice. So yeah, it's the malty backbone of this one's lovely, and you can feel, they're talking about this being layered in their little description. You can kind of feel that actually. So above the bread crust, for me, above the bread crusty layer, you can feel like a layer of a kind of sweeter brown bread, and that's the Vienna malt that's going to give you that. So yeah, the kind of brown bready Vienna malt in this one is going to be the thing that's responsible for that. On top of the kind of brown bready character, you start to get the white bready notes coming out of this one. So on top of that, you've got the kind of brown. On top of that, yeah, you've got the white bready bread crust, the more kind of grainy brown bready character from the Vienna malts, then the softer white bread from the Munich malts, and then above everything else, you get the kind of more crisp Pilsner malt there. It's really interesting how that middle third of the palate actually just kind of pieces together, to be honest with you. So on the top layer of that middle third of your palate, you can feel at the back, you can feel the really dry you can feel the really drier aspects of the Pilsner malt, which is great. Yeah, definitely a little bit of the kind of drier Pilsner malty aspects coming out of this beer. And then, yeah, as you move further forward into the middle of that, the dead centre of your palate, you can feel you've got a little circle in the middle of your palate there, which is a really nice kind of oily, biscuity note, which is quite concentrated actually. So lovely oily kind of biscuity concentrated character coming out of this one. And then, yeah, as you move out toward the edges of your palate there, it gives you that more kind of grainy McVitie's digestive biscuit or cookie for the Americans of you watching. But the dead centre of your palate is, of course, where the concentration of the alcohol is. And remember, the alcohol is actually very important in terms of creating the flavour of these beers, and that's kind of that's kind of why a lot of the alcohol-free beers aren't that great, because you don't have that kind of sweet flavour from the alcohol. But yeah, to be honest, at that point, I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of the palate in this beer. So we can go to the back third of the palate now. Remember the general trend with your palate that the sweeter flavours will come out. They'll come out further forward on your palate, whereas the more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back. And the back third of your palate is going to give you generally the similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. So you can feel there's a little bit of brown bread underneath and the white bread on top. The base of that back third of your palate is the same bread crust that we had before, but it just feels that little bit lighter and slightly more grainy. So yeah, it's a little bit lighter and a little bit more sort of grainy. And then on top of that, you've got the Jacob's cream crackery type layer, which again feels a little bit lighter and a little bit more sort of grainy. And yeah, then you get the kind of brown bready layer from the Vienna malt, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy again, but still a bit drier, I would say, as well. You really get, Vienna malt has a surprising amount of like dryness, kind of rye bready, bread crusty character to it. You see that in Vienna brewed, Vienna lagers, and it's kind of obvious. In here, actually, you get quite a lot of that. But yeah, on top of the kind of brown bready layer, you start to get the white bready layer, which is of course the Munich malt, and you can feel that that's even lighter and more airy as well, and a little bit drier. And above everything else, you can feel the kind of dry, crisp character of the Pilsner malts just creeping over the top of that there, and that forms the top of the malty part of your the back third of your tongue. So yeah, for me then, the back, as I say, the sort of the top of that back third of the palate is where the yeast is going to come out, and you get quite a little bit of yeasty character out of this beer actually. So above everything else on that back third of the palate, you'll feel this really dense kind of oily. You'll feel this really dense bready ball sort of thing there, and it's like a mix of brown bread and white bread and stuff like that, and it's kind of wrapped in honeycomb, which is really nice as well. So yeah, nice kind of that dense brown bready ball, and they're wrapped in honeycomb, and you can feel that's forming your yeasty character. And it's quite the thing is with these fest beers, they do always have a little bit of sweetness to them, and I'm getting quite a little bit of sweetness out of the yeasty character in this beer. So on the back third of your palate, you can definitely feel that the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really nice. So yeah, where do we go from there? I think we go to the green component at this point. We've covered the malty and yeasty side of the beer quite well. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got a lovely little bit of earthiness in there. As you move, but it's quite a wet earthiness, I would point out. As you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the front corners of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit more kind of bright floral aromaticity of this one, and that does make me think that they're using a slightly higher alpha acid German hop in here. Round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, and you've got this lovely sort of oily, kind of zesty, grassy character around the front curve of your tongue. It's great. So, yeah, I really do like how that kind of pieces together in this particular beer. Yeah, lovely stuff actually. Really, really nice. So for me, I would say the green component does have a little touch of bitterness to it, but overall it's quite oily and quite wet. But let's have a look at that front third of your palate then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. You can feel that it's there's a little bit of brown bread underneath, a little bit of white bread on top. Then the base of that front third of your palate, there's the bread crust and the two layers of bread, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, that is quite nice as well. On that note then, the fruity side of the beer, at the back of that front third of your palate, this is kind of typical for the style as well. You get that kind of lighter, white, green, raisiny sort of thing, like the kind of dry white, green grapes in there. That's at the back of the front third of your palate. As you move further forward, you get this really kind of like oily, peary note. There's maybe a very slight touch of like a dry apricot underneath, and as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of like an almost kind of gooseberry type note. Yeah, it's an almost kind of gooseberry type note that you get out of this one, and just a little touch of like a fresh green apple behind the kind of very front tip of your tongue. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that regard is really quite nice. So yeah, interesting, really interesting to see how this beer goes about its business. I think it's been really interesting to try this one. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer, it's got a nice kind of oily thing. I always find these fest beers are a little bit more oily, and I would say this one is pretty true to style, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's leave it at that for the flavour. We'll round off with the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer is kind of top end of light bodied. The carbonation is has a little bit of crispness to it, this one, but this is actually quite an oily and slick lager for me, which again is kind of an inherent trait of the style. In terms of the kind of the IBUs and things like that, I think this one is pretty typical of the style again, about 20 to 25 IBUs. The malt base has a little bit of graininess to it, bit of smoothness in the middle, and quite a little bit of sweetness on top. And then you've got these lovely kind of oily, fruity characters coming out of the beer as well, which I think are very, very nice. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this beer, to be honest with you. I think we've covered everything we really need to. But this is a really nice example of a fest beer, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. As I said, I had no idea that fest beers were quite so popular in the US and that Oktoberfest was such a big deal. But yeah, there you go. Shows you kind of what I know. But yeah, awesome stuff. So this one was the Fest beer coming in at 5.9% ABV, a Fest beer lager from Counterweight Brewing Company in Cheshire here in Connecticut. Really enjoyed doing this one for you. We do have another couple of beers from these guys that I'll have a look at over the next wee while, so keep your eyes peeled for those. But thank you for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Counterweight Brewing Company as well, and we will return to these guys again very, very shortly. But until then, check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you soon. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.